Tai sveiki visi, toliau tęsiam neredaguotą pokalbius ir šiandien turim epizodą tiesiai iš Ukrainos, sekmadienio vakaro, su mūsų laidos svečiu Viktoru Tregubovu ir aišku pašnekėsim apie viską, artėja 200 dienų, pakalbėsim apie Chersoną ir kitus dalykus, tai manau bus įdomu. So welcome back everyone to the Let's Talk Europe episode, and today we have an anniversary, almost an anniversary episode. It's almost 200 days of this last phase of a bloody war in Ukraine. And also, you know, it's probably a third or fourth day or second, we'll find out of this contra, you know, movement in the south, trying to retake the territories. But anyway, Viktor is going to tell us everything. So we have our monthly episode with Viktor Tregubov, who is a captain of the Ukrainian army. So hello, Viktor.
Hello.
So probably everyone is interested, you know, what is happening in the south. We have heard quite a few military experts, especially in the Russian-speaking world, you know, commenting. Of course, we have, you know, everyone who is at least a bit, you know, aware of Russian language follows a person which I'm not going to mention, since we already have talked about him and you have an opinion. So I want to ask you for a start, what's happening? Are we really in the phase where the Russians are getting kicked off the territory of Ukraine, or it's just the beginning and the preparation of this nearest future movement?
Well, it's actually both. For now, Ukraine is using tactics of, I'd say, indirect actions, because for now the situation is more or less in our favor. Of course, the Russians moved all their forces to Kherson area. It's heavily defended and so on, but they have obvious logistical problems. Well, first of all, because that's other bank of Dnieper River, and Dnieper is a huge river. It's 1 kilometer wide in the Kherson area. And they have a great problem now with supplying of the all the troops they moved there. So our tactics, well, of course, theoretically, we can storm all the Kherson and lands near Kherson. That's, well, not a problem, but that will cost us dearly, first of all, in human lives, both civilian and military. So the more indirect approach here is just to use our long hand provided to us with NATO countries, first of all with United States and Great Britain, to destroy all their supply depots, all their headquarters, and all their critical infrastructural, I forgot the proper word, but critical objects of critical infrastructure. After that, we can attack, and they just couldn't actually give any fight back, just because, well, to operate a tank, you need fuel and ammunition. And if we will deplete them from fuel and ammunition before we will start, well, basically, they won't hold. So for us, we are not here to do it fast, but costly. For now, because Russia still has a bigger mobilization potential, we have to save each people's lives. That's not only about ideology, but that's also is about ideology. Of course, we want to spare lives of our military, but it's also about pragmatic thinking, because we desperately need to overplay Russia in terms of attrition. Because that's war that won't gonna end with Kherson and so on. So we need to make maximum damage to them without suffering damage from our side, and maybe the least not suffering damage from our side is even more important. So that's why advance in Kherson Oblast is rather slow, but it is. Russians crumble, but crumble slowly, and we take village by village, not just, well, some kind of furious advance in several days. No, it will be like it is. It will be breaks in several directions. It will be taking land village by village. And of course, it will be constant HIMARS and artillery strikes on Russian positions, far beyond the front lines.
Okay, so since you mentioned, the logistical problems and the obvious reason, that you're trying to make that impossible or maximize, the difficulties of the Russian side. So should we understand that all the bridges that cross the Dnieper River in the Kherson or Kherson and Zaporizhia, regions, they are under constant fire, they are damaged. And I remember I was talking with a Lithuanian military officer, and then somebody in the comments corrected me that the bridges for the trains and for the the ones that you can transport the tanks or some other military equipment on the wheels are different. So are there any bridges in Kherson which you are not targeting with the HIMARS and which are not affected structurally? What is the situation? How do the Russian Federation Army resupply themselves at the moment? Is it only from like boats or pontons, or what is the situation there?
Well, for now it's good for us because even Mr. Girkin, Mr. Igor Strelkov, who this person is, actually today he told that yes, all bridges are either destroyed or critically damaged, and yes, even Antonovsky Bridge, Antonovsky Automobile Bridge, which is actually the biggest one and the most reliable one. Well, Russians try to use it and to cross it with a Tiger automobile. It's military automobile, just like a big jeep, and it actually got. It just fall in one of the holes. So it's practically you can pass this bridge, but only on foot. You cannot actually move even car using it. So basically, yes, they are cut off. And of course, they try to supply with other means like using aviation or using barges. I don't know, is it proper English word?
Yeah, probably everybody understands.
Yeah, like ships, but ships are also under constant fire, and it's problematic for them. So yes, now they are trapped, and that's good news.
But Viktor, what about basically now I forgot the right word, but other means of transport like railways. Is it possible to use the railway bridges, because they are probably more constructually harder to destroy, since they have to the capacity of the trains are much higher. So what is the situation with those bridges?
Pretty simple. There are only one major railway bridge there. It's Antonovsky Railway Bridge, and as far as I know, it's damaged even worse than Antonovsky Automobile, so it's uncrossable. And actually, you don't want to move, even if it was crossable, you don't want to move trains there, because it became uncrossable after Ukrainian HIMARS hit a train with ammunition when the train was on this bridge. So it just made a really big boom. Train is much easier target than automobile or even tank, because the train is coming from long distance. You can actually calculate when the train will be on that bridge and strike directly in that moment. So, and the result will be, as it is actually now, destroyed train with destroyed bridge. So.
Well, that sounds actually maybe a bit too good, even for a current stage. So how do they resupply, or are they already on the retreat and running away? Because we heard stories in the media as well that Russians are running away. So what is the current situation? Are they retreating, or are they digging the trenches? Or how are they positioning themselves?
As far as I see, they have no solution. They cannot retreat because it's painful politically, but not to retreat and to get themselves killed will be even worse politically. And still, they made a big amounts of stashes in Kherson and Kherson Oblast. A big amount of ammo depots and so on, and fuel depots. So they still have something to work with. But however, we're striking these depots right now. And with each day, but not even day, but each night, because HIMARS attacks made mostly by night, with each night there are fewer and fewer. And of course, in some, I say, close perspective, they will have ammunition hunger and fuel hunger. What will they do after that? Well, logic tells us that they should actually retreat. But that's Russia, so I don't know. Retreating for them is too heavy moral blow. However, well, dying is also a big moral blow, so I cannot predict which they could choose.
So what about those that third corpus? You know, those conscripts that you know, they were gathering through the mobilization process. Are they deployed somewhere, you know, in Kherson, on the other side of the river? Are they trying to, you know, come to the help of those trapped on the right side of the bank, or are they you know, joining forces somewhere else in the Donbas region?
So-called Third Army Corps. For now, as I know, some regiments of it deployed in Kherson Oblast, but not on the western, but on eastern bank of Dnipro. So it's actually a river away. I don't suppose that actually these regiments are really battle ready, because even the story of creating of this some kind of corps is really strange for me, because even current Russian military structures have some kind of human resource hunger. And if you have human resource hunger, it's more logical for you to replenish the troops you already have, not to create new ones. And the big problems Russia also has, its first of all, its problems with material, technical material and so on, and secondary with officers of low grade, like from lieutenant to captain. They are too few. And experienced one is almost scarce. So for now, I don't know what they plan to do with this so-called third corps, just because it will be undereducated, without weapons, without normal materials and supply. So I actually cannot see how it will help them, or what problem it could fix.
Okay, so let's, since you mentioned the long arm, you know, everybody is actually, you know, waiting for fighter jets, you know, F-16s and stuff. Probably this is not the case, but we hear that from Poland, from Czech Republic and Slovakia, Ukrainians have received this modernized MiGs, you know, with the Western rocketry on them. Is that the success of long-range targets, or are you firing ATACMS, or what is the long arm that, you know, is the most successful besides you know, the HIMARS?
That's a combination. I suppose you mean HARM rockets. Anti-radar rockets we use now. The biggest victory of the current few weeks is that we actually made it to deploy them on MiG planes. It wasn't supposed to be like that, but we find a technical solution, and we can fire them from MiGs, which actually is a great problem for Russian, because these rockets were specifically designed to hit anti-aircraft defense and radars. And so for Russians, it's a big problem, because they can actually lose, and already lost in several ways, their aerial superiority, just because our anti-aircraft defense can put down their planes. And when their anti-aircraft defense try to do that, we could actually destroy it from longer range. From range longer, it can operate. So for now, it's more like Ukrainian sky under Kherson, and it actually means that Russians cannot stop our advance with their own aviation, and that's just great news for us. That's just some kind of technical victory we achieved, and that's the most, the best weapon after HIMARS we got for now, just for this specific case of Kherson offensive.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, there are no ATACMS from states operating yet, with the range which is greater than 70 kilometers or something like that, yeah?
Sorry, truth to be told about ATACMS, I just don't know. Well, there is no official info and even unofficial, but for now, as long as the main, battle rages near Kherson, just distances near Kherson is not so big. You need to use some kind of these long-range weapons. You can use HIMARSs pretty effectively, and 70 kilometers is good for you. Maybe if the war will move in direction of Crimea, that will be other case, of course, and I suppose that maybe we will have these weapons, at least on that stage. But for now, I just cannot comment, not that I cannot do official also, but I just really don't know for now. But I hope that at least some negotiations about that could be ongoing.
Okay, so as I understand, Kherson is doable this year. Do you think it's the tactic that Ukrainians are using at the moment? Wearing down the Russian forces and cutting them from the supply lines. Is that doable until the winter hits to get them out of the whole Kherson region, or maybe just from the Western Bank? What is the plan? Because of course we heard the president of Ukraine saying that the military operation should be over until the winter, but still, we're kind of skeptical. Of course, it would be great if it would be like that. How could you comment on this goal and what is doable until the winter?
I suppose that western part of Kherson Oblast is actually doable and possible. Well, of course, that's hard to predict because we don't know, will the Russians try to, burn their regiments and their units there, holding the ground as long as they theoretically could do with big number of victims from their side, or they will just try to reorganize on the other bank of the river. The second one could be more logical for them, but that's Russians, so they could try to hold. But still, I suppose that even if they will try to hold, we still can do it before winter. I hope so, and it looks like that. They are not, for now, as I see the situation on the ground, they actually have no, answers to challenges we propose. They have no ability to counter these long-range weapons, and they have no, I'd say, effective infantry to stop our advance. So for now, objectively, we are slowly in tactical aspects, not in strategic, but on tactical scale. But we are winning. That's good.
Since you mentioned the infantry, and we know that the part that which is on the offense, there is this 3-1 or 5-1 golden rule. So is Ukraine ready, in this sense, for a contra-offense, or is it some kind of new smart way of fighting where you don't need to have this kind of advantage?
It all depends from actual supplies that your enemy has. Theoretically we have this numerical advantage, but to use it we need to accept heavy losses. We don't want. So we try to do everything to weaken Russian forces in the region as far as possible. Before starting their real advance on the ground. And for now, we are more or less successful in that.
Okay, so probably I'm going to ask you before we maybe have a small section regarding how the war these last 200 days progressed and what were the main stages for our European listeners who are not so familiar with the war. I still want to ask you, what is the situation Zaporizhia Oblast? What is the situation in Donbass, in Kharkiv? Is it that, once you are hitting the Kherson region, they are trying to hit you back on those other regions where they have the logistical advantage, or let's say they are not cut off like here?
Well, it's good. Today we took also one village in Donetsk Oblast, and as far as I know, one village in Kharkiv Oblast. So basically, Russians for now run thin of forces in that area because they moved some of them south, and that's good. However, Russia tried to advance in other region of Donetsk Oblast. It's near Bakhmut and so on. So they try to advance on that direction. As far as I know, with no success, but they are trying. So in these regions, it's more like how should I put it? It's more like a dogfight. So one step further, one step backwards, and so on. So practically, but in Kharkiv Oblast, there are some advances from Ukrainian side. So it's not so bad either.
All right. So, we know that there is some political, goal in terms of Putin's birthday, or, how they joke it, or to take the whole Donbass area. What do you think about these kind of political goals that are set for the Russian Federation Army? Are they doomed, or it depends on the, I don't know, some kind of circumstances?
No,
what is your
I don't
opinion?
think so. I don't think that Russian has any surprises to offer. I don't think they have some kind of Trumps and their slaves or whatever. No, they actually run off any kind of life hacks, and we can see that. We can see that even in those aspects that they actually try to find help in Iran and North Korea. Well, you are not trying to find help in such countries if you are not desperate. And it looks like they are desperate. They just run off for any leverage to turn things in their favor. So, and even the possible resign of Kadyrov from the post of Chechen head of state, well, that's something symbolic for us. It's look like Russians not only have problems, they have problems for long. They actually have no ability to hide these problems anymore.
Okay, that's all, of course, good news, from boots on the ground, from you. So maybe let's switch, our chat towards, how this last phase of the war, hopefully it's going to be the last of the last, how it's changing. We all, were holding our breaths on the February 24th, and, everybody in the West were thinking of the 3-day war. Then, we saw what happened. How could you describe the phases that this last phase of 200 days has passed, and what was maybe the critical, well, besides of course the HIMARS, what was the critical point of changing the attitude of the war and the successful for the Ukrainian side? Of course, the first one is probably the spirit of Ukrainians, but how could you comment on the whole journey, from February 24th? In your opinion, what was the hardest phase? What are how it was tackled, and your opinion?
Well, first of all, the first stage of Russian advance, the first stage of their aggression, was complete disaster for them. It's when they tried to attack Kiev, Kharkiv, and so on. And from the start, they used absolutely illogical, absolutely unrealistic strategic planning, and they failed. And that was first. They failed.
Here I want to ask one thing, because I have talked with U.S. military, officers, and also, of course, the Lithuanians quite oftenly, and nobody really can answer the one very simple question: how U.S. intelligence, failed to understand that Ukraine is gonna hold more than 3 days. I mean, we all know that the capabilities of US, what maybe it was a strategical, move or something, or it's just, the brain, I don't know, or some kind of logical understanding of West, East is there is a barrier or something like that. What would you say?
Well, I suppose that the tale of great, powerful, and scary Russia was a tale many people wanted to believe. It was good for some American experts because they could just project views about Soviet Union on Russia and project narratives of Soviet Union on Russia. No need to change nothing. It was actually good for many generals because they could get a financing, telling that Russia is almost so strong as Soviet Union, so we need weapons and so on and so on. Russia was just overrated, and of course, Russia paid terrible sums of money to keep this stereotype, to convince everyone in Europe and in US that Russia is really strong, that Russian military is really comparable to United States military and so on, so on. Well, all of that was absolute, complete bullshit. Russian forces never were actually so strong as they actually want everyone to believe. We knew that after the maybe 7 years of war, we knew that. But still, Europeans, Americans, and even post-Soviet countries believed that Russia, for now, is some kind of, slightly cutted Soviet Union. No, it's completely different country with completely weaker military, and it could be beatable. It could be beaten. And Ukraine is, also there was problem with Ukrainian stereotypes that like Ukraine is a really corrupt country and such a corrupt country cannot withstand a full-scale attack from such a powerful state like Russia. Well, also bullshit, but bullshit that many people, even majority of people on the West chose to believe. That's sad, but good we ended that.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree on this one. But what is still strange that of course you can have the analysts, you can have some like political consultants who can be paid, or receive some kind of money flow from Russia, and they can do their job. But the intel, the army intel, which was basically they were sharing some information with the Ukraine, and most of stuff probably helped regarding the positions and amount of forces and vehicles and stuff like that. But the general consensus was that the Ukrainians will not hold. That's still like a mystery for most, I think, who believe that the intel that US gathers for all those satellites and all the agencies they have is actually the best possible. So you think it's just the corruption, and this narrative that was paid by Russians, that's the biggest explanation?
Basically, yes, but never actually overestimate Intel as it is, because of course, U.S. intelligence could know where Russian forces deployed, what they do to prepare for offensive, and so on, so on. But there was many things that they actually couldn't know for sure. However, how ineffective the command chain in Russian forces is. How ineffective it is not in some kind of pseudo-guerrilla warfare in Syria or Chechnya, but in full-scale warfare like in Ukraine. How actually how bad is the technical, I'd say, state of Russian material. How corrupt is the Russian army, and how effective is even the fuel they get for their tanks, and so on and so on. So many of these small factors was just ignored. Well, they were just ignored as unnecessary, or maybe even worse, just Soviet norms, Soviet normatives Soviet stereotypes was just projected on Russian army like it was just some kind of direct successor. Well, it was a mistake, but that's mistake that actually human make, and even intelligence officers make. That's normal. Well, human error rest.
Okay, so if we look at this this disaster that Russians faced near Kiev, and they had to basically retreat and then, regroup, and everybody was talking about, this huge upcoming battle of Donbass. What happened, in your opinion, there that we have never experienced, or maybe that's the most they could put, forward? What do you think? Why they did not learn from those mistakes, which were obvious by when were they trying to take Kiev, and then after the grouping, we saw the same, Russian army, not some kind of, army which have learned from their mistakes and used some kind of different tactics.
Well, they learned from their mistakes, actually. In the second period of war was more or less war of attrition, and they could effectively actually use their advantage in numbers of artillery and ammunition. And they actually were really effective in that. They took Mariupol, almost destroyed it. They took Popasna, they took Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, and they actually succeeded in that just because they used their biggest and most objective advantage to its fullest.
But Viktor, we are still talking about, taking the whole area of Donbass, and they are still kind of putting forward the goal. So we can obviously say that they haven't succeeded yet, and this is only one region, so.
Just let me finish. But then Ukrainian forces got the weapons we really needed to counter that. Pretty simple. We get our own long range weapons, our own long arc, and after that, this advantage was nullified because you cannot use your artillery if your artillery depots is constantly exploding.
Yeah, but so, many could ask the question: 20 HIMARSs change the whole, course of the war. With the front is like over 1,000 kilometers. Obviously, they are not the only reason for this disaster of Russian attack.
Well, I know that it actually sounds difficult to understand, but in some aspect, yes. Even 20 HIMARSs, because they were actually used almost non-stop and effectively, because you have a limited number of crucial infrastructure points. It's not like there are millions of artillery depots. It's not like millions of fuel depots and millions of headquarters. No, these targets are actually limited. And if even one side of the conflict has the ability to strike them constantly and with great aim, so yes, that's a game changer. And as well as the anti-radar rockets is a game changer when we talk about aviation and anti-aircraft defense. And of course, there are also a factor of attrition. Russian forces never prepared to long warfare, to long offensive. Even their artillery, of course, they have great numbers of artillery, but you need to change barrels. No, not even just ammunition, but to change barrels after several months of constant fire. And how can you change these barrels if you are not actually making them new because your military industry is under heavy sanctions? So yes, they had great Soviet time. Forgot the word, but great amounts from Soviet times. But it still can be depleted. And they are actually depleting it right now as we're speaking. They almost run out of long-range rockets. And long-range rockets they use now is ineffective because yesterday they tried to hit Dnipropetrovsk Oblast with a number of rockets, 5 rockets, and all 5 rockets were down by Ukraine anti-aircraft system, because our guys are also teaching themselves how to beat this specific type of missiles. So, yes, they just run out of options, and for now, the attrition is killing them. Of course, we also have our kind of attrition, but we can replenish. We can replenish our weapons with Western supply. We can replenish our troops with mobilized people, and so on and so on. We are not in such a hurry. But
yeah, so
they can.
Here I want to ask one thing, because we also heard that, if I remember correctly, May and April were the months when, Ukraine ran out of post-Soviet weaponry, and the weaponry from the West was not coming in the appropriate packages, and amounts. How did you guys withstood those few months when the old weaponry was running out, or even completely out, and the new was just coming in? Is that the tactical advantage, or or advantage because you were defending territory? How could you explain that?
We did it actually bad, and on pure heroism in some aspects, because that was actually the most tragical months for us. That was the months when Mariupol fell, when Russians actually took many towns in Luhansk Oblast, and so on. That was the hardest times for us, just because after initial euphoria, after Russians withdrew from Kiev, Chernigov, and from the north at all, after that euphoria, we got a new problem, and this gap. It was painful. I'm always telling that if we got HIMARSes maybe several months earlier, Severodonetsk for now would be Ukrainian, or maybe even Mariupol. Yes, these months maybe from, I'd say, April, May to the July, it was the hardest period, and we wasn't sure what to do. But we survived. Russians advanced, but not as good as they actually wanted. And I suppose that that was the period when we survived on pure heroism and poor fuck off as our national motto. So
okay, so we also are hearing that the Russian aim is to prolong the war, to use the winter, to scare the Europeans, with the cold, and of course cut off the Ukrainians, damage their electrical grid, and Zaporizhia and stuff like that. What do you think about this upcoming late autumn and winter? What are the advantages and disadvantages on both sides, if we could look into that?
Well, I suppose that the main advantage for Ukrainian side is that actually Russian will meet a bigger and bigger hunger in many aspects, beginning from ammunition and to qualified personnel, because they actually cannot replenish their material and their human resources as fast as we are destroying them. And that will be the biggest problem in that period. And I suppose Russia will do everything to freeze the conflict on some lines, everything to stop the conflict from going further, just because they need time to replenish. And I suppose we will try not to give them that time.
All right, so we're also hearing that winter could be an option for some kind of political agreement, and of course that means something like Minsk free. We have already talked with you like in many episodes that Ukrainians were never up for it, and they are not up for it now. What do you think about any kind of political option of solving this war? Is it possible? Is there any kind of I don't know thing that Westerners could actually pull maybe the plug of finances or something, what would be, the worst case scenario that you could face by by the Westerners trying to push you towards some kind of political agreement?
Well, I suppose that for now we are in that stage when we just cannot stop. We understand that any stop will be just a prelude to new war, new conflict on worse terms. So for us, it's important to finish this war with victory. For us, the only possible term of ceasefire and negotiations is just Russians getting out from Ukrainian territory. And I mean not out of Ukrainian territory. We controlled during the start of this year, but actually all legitimate Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. So that's our goal here, and it cannot be changed now. I suppose Ukrainian society isn't really ready for any compromise that include Russians staying on Ukrainian soil. We could talk about reparations or so on. We could talk about some kind of debts and economic things and about who gonna pay for destroyed cities. That could be, some aspect for negotiations, but Russian military have to, to read what actually Russian warship did, and just after that we could talk about anything. So I cannot find any possible political solution because obviously it's a suicide for any Russian leadership. Not even for Putin, I suppose, for any Russian leadership, even if Putin will die and some kind of Navalny will take his place, it will be also suicide for him to give Crimea back to Ukrainians. But, it's their problems, not ours. We want our land back, and that's our main goal and our main term.
Yeah, there's one more thing in this regard I want to ask you, because we all, time to time hear this speculation that there are some kind of view differences or, tensions between the political government and military government in Ukraine. How would you comment on such fake news?
I suppose it's bullshit, plain and simple. I don't know anything about some kind of real problems between, I'd say current political and military leadership. I'd say nothing exclusive or nothing strange, but common Ukrainian small quarrels. It's absolutely normal for Ukraine. We're just country like that. I suppose that Lithuania is more or less close to us in that particular case, so maybe you'll understand. So nothing extraordinary, absolutely.
And what about the vibe in terms of society? Because we probably in Europe see some problems with our societies, which in some sense are maybe getting tired of the war. I just had a chance to talk on Friday with a person from Warsaw, how, this huge amount of Ukrainians in Poland, and, there's definitely some kind of, feeling that, it's overwhelming for the societies. How the Ukrainian society feels about war and all the focus. What I'm trying to ask, maybe they would like some kind of ceasefire, or this is also out of the question, and they feel similar to the politicians and the military.
Well, imagine then you try to swim across a mountain river and you are just maybe in the center. You cannot just tell, okay, I'm tired, I'm going back. That's our situation precisely. I suppose our society now in a state of survival, in state of we understood that war is going on. No one actually is thinking that it's gonna be easy and gonna be soon, blah, blah, blah. No, we see that this is a question of our survival, and it is going for relatively long, and it will take some time to win, but we began to win. So we just won't turn back and will try to cross the same river, but in different direction. No, it's idiotic. And we do not want to drown. So for us, it's more like stoically, plain and simple. We just have to move on and to win and to stop this madness once and for all.
Okay, so the last thing I want to ask you, because we still are seeing, these talks about, especially from those morons in the office in Moscow, and the nuclear plant in Ukraine, which is obviously a potential threat to the whole Europe. What do you think? Has this nuclear thing changed over the last few months? Is it still possible that Russians, of course, it's always theoretically possible that they can do something unthinkable, but like the threat level in terms of nuclear threat, has it changed? Has it disappeared? Or, it's all the same as a few months ago?
I suppose not. I suppose it's bluff. Just because if they really wanted to do something like that, they should have done it already. If they don't, it's a bluff. So pretty simple.
All right, Viktor. So everybody who's seeing Viktor smoking this victory cigar, so it's not a full victory yet, but we are approaching. So Viktor, as usual, thank you so much for taking your time late in the evening. We are recording at 10 p.m. So obviously it's a pleasure. So hopefully we'll catch you soon again, and it's gonna be even a better vibe. And thanks everyone who is watching. We are trying to keep the episodes weekly, but with the guests, it's not always the case. So we will try to stick to the weekly schedule. So thanks so much, and see you in the next Let's Talk Europe episode.